Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. And in our ongoing tribute to Medal of Honor winners, tonight we're going to honor Private George Sakato, who died recently at the age of 94. Private Sakato was a Nisei, a second-generation Japanese, and he was part of the legendary 442nd Regiment, the most highly decorated regiment in World War II. And we talked about them when we did our podcast on Daniel Inouye. He won his Medal of Honor for his actions in October of 1944 in eastern France when he was part of the team that was sent to rescue the Lost Battalion, 200 soldiers from the Texas National Guard who, on the Allied march to Germany, advanced too far ahead and were surrounded by the Germans. They were rescued by Private Sakato and the 442nd, who incurred heavy casualties. At the time, Private Sakato received the Distinguished Service Cross, the Army's second highest award for bravery, and recommended for the Medal of Honor, but like other Asian American soldiers at the time, he was denied the Medal of Honor, and it wasn't until June 21, 2000 that Private Sakato was awarded the Medal of Honor by President Clinton in a ceremony at the White House. Private Sakato's entry in the Medal of Honor website reads as follows. Private George T. Sakato distinguished himself by extraordinary heroism in action on 29 October 1944 on Hill 617 in the vicinity of Bifontaine, France. After his platoon had virtually destroyed 2 enemy defense lines, during which he personally killed 5 enemy soldiers and captured 4, his unit was pinned down by heavy enemy fire. Disregarding the enemy fire, Private Sakato made a one-man rush that encouraged his platoon to charge and destroy the enemy's strong point. While his platoon was reorganizing, he proved to be the inspiration of his squad in halting a counterattack on the left flank, during which his squad leader was killed. Taking charge of the squad, he continued his relentless tactics, using an enemy rifle and P-38 pistol to stop an organized enemy attack. During this entire action, he killed 12 and wounded 2, personally captured 4, and assisted his platoon in taking 34 prisoners. By continuously ignoring enemy fire and by his gallant courage and fighting spirit, he turned impending defeat into victory and helped his platoon complete its mission. Private Sakato's extraordinary heroism and devotion to duty are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit on him, his unit, and the United States Army. Here is Private Sakato's story in his own words.
I'm an American and this is my duty. I was enlisted for the Air Force and then my draft card was 4C, enemy alien. I said, what do you mean enemy alien? I'm an American. In 41, we had just opened up our shop and I heard the newscast. Franklin Roosevelt said Pearl Harbor was being bombed, and I couldn't believe that Pearl Harbor was being bombed. My goodness, what are we going to do now? Then they gave us orders that we couldn't travel over 3 miles from our residence. So that lasted for about a month or 2 months. And then we had orders we were going to have to move to relocation centers, prison camps, barbed wire fence, guard towers on each corner, and the machine guns were pointing in, not out. President Roosevelt signed the decree that we would finally join in our Army.
When the Army announces that young Nisei can join their own regimental combat units, hundreds leave internment camps to enlist. Members of the new 442nd Japanese American Combat Team are anxious to prove their loyalty to their country of birth and defy national prejudice that they are aliens and dangerous.
Seeking to avoid the mandatory internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, George Sakato's family relocated from California to Arizona. There, the 21-year-old tried to join the Army Air Corps, but found that the Army's recruiters were not so accommodating.
I volunteered for the Air Force, and I was called up and went to first in March 44, and got on the train and ended up in Camp Landing, Florida. And I'm looking for the planes, and they're just, where's the planes? I said, oh, I'm sorry, you're in the infantry.
Sakato was assigned to the segregated 442nd Regimental Combat Team, which was comprised primarily of second-generation Japanese Americans and would become the most decorated American unit in the war.
June 1944. The newly formed 442nd leave for combat duty in Europe. 1 month later, they arrived in Italy and joined the 100th Infantry Battalion under the command of General Mark Clark. The all-Nisei 442nd Regimental Combat Team go on to become the most decorated unit in U.S. military history. They coined the motto, "Go for broke," and uphold these words throughout their service in World War II.
After landing in France in 1944 and fighting successfully northward for months,
We had to go rescue the Lost Battalion.
October 1944. The combat team is sent to France. They become attached to the 36th Division, commanded by Major General John Dalquist. The commander is demanding, aggressive, and viewed by the 442nd as biased against Japanese units. Near Bifontaine, France, the 442nd prepares to undergo its most infamous battle, the rescue of the Lost Battalion. The 36th Division, which just liberated Gruyere, strays deep inside the Vosges Mountains, cut off from its unit. They are hopelessly surrounded by Germans. They have been without food or supplies for nearly a week. When General Dalquist orders the depleted 442nd to rescue the troops, the men are shocked. Day after day, the Nisei unit is put on the front lines while Dalquist's other battalion lay dormant. The harsh mountain terrain offers little protection for the soldiers. Airdrops of food and ammunition are attempted, but get caught on the trees or fall out of reach. The forest is so dark that each man has to hold on to the strap of the pack of the man ahead of him. After a grueling and bloody battle, the 442nd finally breaks through and rescues the 36th. They save more than 200 men.
They could see for miles the troop movement a mile away. So they had control of that valley, and they wanted to take that hill. But every time we got in the open area, well, they could see the machine gun was fired up, and we couldn't cross that railroad tracks. So that night we got on trucks. They trucked us around a couple of the hills, and we came back. And this time we crossed enemy lines, and we marched all night. And we're now on the back of this ridge. And then at dawn we started our attack. So we caught the Germans off guard. They didn't know that we were in back of it now. I took 3 machine guns out of that area and chased them off the hill, chased them out of the foxholes. They scattered the other way. And then in the meantime, I was taking prisoners back, and now they're going to counterattack. The artillery started coming in. So we had to jump in the Germans' foxholes this time. Artillery shells were coming in, and I jumped in one hole, and I had a Thompson submachine gun, and I found a tank that blew out. I had all kinds of firepower. And then the counterattack really started coming in. When the German attack started coming and charging up, I fired 60 rounds of ammunition at them. And then they stopped charging. So there was a lull, and they were going to regroup. So I started filling my clips back up with ammunition. I was leaning back, and I was looking up the hill, and I seen a group of German soldiers going up the hill with machine guns. So I says, "What's for the machine gun up there?" My buddy turns around, and he stands up for some reason. I don't know why. And he says, "Where?" And the machine gun shot him. So I crawled over to his hole, and I picked him up, and he's trying to say something to me. And I was a gurgle, and then pretty soon his body went limp on me, and I knew he died. I sat there and I held him. Why? And he died. I so mad, I cried and ran up that hill. Where I got the energy to run that hill, I never had before. I could never climb a hill before.
Sakato launched a one-man assault on the Germans, charging headlong into the counterattack, killing 12 of the enemy and personally capturing 4. Inspired by his brave charge, Sakato's platoon followed, taking the hill and capturing 34 prisoners.
The 442nd loses more than 800 men. Controversy still surrounds Dalquist's decision. Were the Nisei mere cannon fodder due to their Japanese descent? Was it just a rash order of an overzealous general? Or were the Nisei simply the best men for the job? After liberating Gruyere and freeing the Lost Battalion, the 442nd is finally called back to camp. General Dalquist orders a regimental review. When the regiment passes, the general turns to the 442nd's commander and says, "I ordered the entire regiment to pass in review." The colonel replies with tears running down his cheeks, "Sir, this is all that is left of the 442nd."
Injured in a subsequent action, Sakato was hospitalized for 8 months. He heard that he'd been recommended for the Medal of Honor, but was instead awarded the Distinguished Service Cross.
55 years later, I'm at home, retired, enjoying fishing and golfing and everything. And I get this call from the Pentagon. Mr. Kirk Leiters is Pentagon. We want you to come to Washington, D.C. to the White House. What for? We're upgrading your Distinguished Service Cross to the Medal of Honor. So June 20th, 55 years later, I go to Washington. June 20th, 2000, President Clinton gave me this medal. I couldn't believe they're going to give me the Medal of Honor. After all, I was 90 days of actual combat. I was just a recruit. I was just a raw private. I'm an American, and I wanted to show my loyalty to the country.
Along those lines, after the war, President Truman said of the 442nd Nisei,
Newly sworn-in President Truman honors the 442nd.
You fought not only the enemy, but you fought prejudice, and you've won. Keep up that fight, and we'll continue to win. To make this great republic stand for just what its Constitution says it stands for, the welfare of all the people, all the time.
I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. Private Sakato, we want to thank you for your service. We cannot begin to repay the debt that we owe you. You and the others like you have our undying gratitude.
As the kids would learn to respect the flag, do their duty for America, I think this would be a better country altogether.